Yesterday in my main segment, I talked about a woman, a Democrat in Michigan, who threatened Trump supporters, calling on her soldiers to, quote, make them pay. And, I brought up how I've been saying I'm very worried about the potential for civil war for some time. And there are many people who say, interesting, we'll see what happens. There are many people who are polishing their guns who say, I've been ready for this longer than you've been alive, Tim. And there are many people who are like, you're absolutely crazy. Last night, civil war was trending on Twitter. You know why? As of right now, there are 18 states raising objections to this election, essentially demanding that Donald Trump be named the victor. It may be more than that, because I've heard people say 19, but I can't verify one of these states. And I've seen some people suggest that one of the states, I think Iowa, I'm not sure, wasn't actually getting on board. But let me just slow down for a second. Texas filed a lawsuit, and they're saying that 4 states, I believe it's Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, violated the electors clause of the Constitution, meaning state legislatures have total authority on how elections are run and electors are appointed. But in these states, the rules of the elections were changed against the will of the legislatures, who actually in many instances complained about this and were overruled by their courts. The Constitution does not allow for that. So Texas sues. Well, yesterday, I mentioned when we see this woman calling for violence, saying the Trumpers better, be prepared or be warned, we're not playing around. And there's increasing calls for violence. But you have, at the time, 5 states filing suit, or I should say they're filing leave. They want permission from the Supreme Court to file this complaint. The states have started lining up against each other. We had 5 states suing 4 other states. Okay. Well, I produced that segment. And then several hours later, the total number became 17. 17. And I have a lot of friends who are not American who are saying, like, what is going on? 17 states. Now it's 18. Why? Because Arizona joined. What you see before you is an amicus curiae. I'm pronouncing that wrong, probably, but it is essentially a statement of support for the Texas. So let me just read this. In the Supreme Court of the United States, state of Texas versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, state of Georgia, state of Michigan, and state of Wisconsin on motion for leave to file bill of complaint. Texas is filing for leave. 16 other states have supported this, and Arizona is now involved. But let me make sure I have the numbers right. So I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna show you the states that have supported this. And now we have Rush Limbaugh saying that many red states are moving towards secession. Yeah. Additional counsel. We have Alabama, Nebraska, Arkansas, North Dakota, Florida, Oklahoma, Indiana, South Carolina, Kansas, South Dakota, Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Utah, Montana, and the state of West Virginia. So we have 16 plus Texas, and now we have Arizona. Mark Bernovich says, our office has received many inquiries about the Texas versus Pennsylvania lawsuit filed at the U.S. Supreme Court, and whether Arizona will participate. Here is my statement and our legal filing. Arizona Attorney General says, today we filed a brief with the U.S. Supreme Court in Texas v. Pennsylvania. It's important that everyone has faith in the system and the results of the election. The rule of law is about consistency and certainty. I believe Arizona wasn't named in this lawsuit because our office successfully prevented many of the same troubling and last-minute changes to our state's election integrity laws. Our legal filing ensures Arizona's interests are protected, and I look forward to the Supreme Court addressing these national election concerns. Now, there's no guarantee the Supreme Court will actually take up the case. But for those that haven't been following the story, the gist is this. And let me just tell you, you want to talk about Trump's lawsuits? You want to make fun of them? You want to make fun of the Kraken lawsuits? Good, by all means. I don't care. Sidney Powell, in my opinion, is bad for Trump's actual chances because the claims she's brought forward are, I'll just say, far-fetched. I'm not saying that they're absolutely impossible, but she's accused of voting machine system and international interests of subverting election and flipping votes. Very, very difficult to prove in a court of law and would require an extensive investigation. The suit we're seeing now from Texas that could actually flip the results and make Donald Trump the president for another 4 years argue that these states had no right to change their rules. Now, many on the left have argued Texas has no standing. There's no injury. Oh, is that the name of the game? It is. In Pennsylvania, when Republicans sued over mail-in voting, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said, you're too late. Sorry. Well, that's weird because many pointed out that the Republicans could not sue if they did not sustain injury in fact, meaning there has to be some damage that you're suing for that can be resolved in some way. So in Pennsylvania, a lawsuit was brought by several Republicans saying that mail-in voting was unconstitutional. The lower courts agreed and put an injunction in place on certification and then ruled that they'll probably win on the merits. This made it to the state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, who said no. Now, although Republican legislature in Pennsylvania did and actually pass Act 77, which created no excuse mail-in voting, the Supreme Court, the governor, the Secretary of State changed the rules around mail-in voting without permission from the state legislature. So essentially, that's how they violated the electors clause. And it's more than just that, because many of these states had executive authority just mandate mail-in voting or other rule changes against the will of the legislature. Here's why these states actually do have actually, let me wrap that thought up. You need to be injured to sue. So people are mad that the Republicans couldn't have sued early because of no injury, and they can't sue now because it's too late. It sounds like they're just trying to jam the system up to prevent Republicans from actually challenging what is unconstitutional. But when it comes to Texas, Texas says they do have standing. Why? They don't care about the the presidential election. They care about the vice presidential election. The vice president breaks the tie in the Senate. The Senate represents state interests. House of Representatives represents the people's interests. Texas is facing damage if these four states that are Democrat changed the rules to help a Democrat vice president that will impact the Republican senators of Texas, in which case Texas needs to sue now. And the left is already saying there's no injury. There's no injury. So what? Should Texas wait until they inaugurate Joe Biden, then sue? There's no overturning it at that point. The Supreme Court might not take up the case. Later today, we're supposed to hear a response from these four states, and things could get a bit spicy. Well, Donald Trump has called on Ted Cruz to argue the Texas election lawsuit if it does reach the Supreme Court. And I believe Ted Cruz probably will. But there's a bigger picture here. You may have heard about all this stuff. We covered it last night. Developments are ongoing. What do I say to someone? No, hold on. You know what, man? Yesterday I said states were lining up against each other. And it could just end here. I don't know. 3 years ago, I said, wow, it looks like we're heading dangerously towards civil war. A year later, with the street clashes and Proud Boys and Antifa and violence, I said, it looks like we're getting dangerously close to a civil war. And people kept saying, no. Now, as I mentioned, many people are sitting there polishing their guns saying, just let me know when, because they're ready to defend their homes. But I didn't say it was guaranteed. I didn't say it's absolutely going to happen. I just keep seeing these things that indicate, right? Well, I wonder if these people who laughed are laughing now that 18 states are demanding essentially that Donald Trump be made president. What the lawsuit says from Texas is that the elections of these states are irrelevant because the rules were changed and the Constitution was violated, and their state legislatures should appoint their own electors. If they do, it is very likely they will appoint Trump electors or maybe even abstain. And if they do abstain, then Joe Biden doesn't get to 270. And if he doesn't, there is a contingent election where House delegations vote. Each state gets one vote. Donald Trump wins because there's more Republican states than Democrat. That seems entirely possible. It also seems like if that does happen, there will be a civil war, right? You've already got Trump supporters calling for martial law. You've already got hard lockdowns, widespread rioting this year. We have seen extreme violence between left and right. We have seen rioting in the streets. Right now, an autonomous zone has been set up in Portland, where these Antifa in Portland have set up booby traps for police and are armed and have kicked the cops out. Autonomous zones are emerging. Police are being defunded. And 18 states just stepped up and said Joe Biden should not be president. Now, they didn't say it specifically, but come on. That's basically what they're saying. And what happens if Joe Biden is made president? And it all gets so much worse. Now, I think I'm going to do a bigger story on this later. But we're now learning Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, is under criminal investigation, potentially involving money laundering in his business dealings with China. And who facilitated those dealings? Joe Biden, the man they say is supposed to be president. He flew his son in Air Force Two to China to get millions of dollars and negotiate $1 billion equity deal, which he is now under criminal investigation over. Maybe not that one specifically, but his Chinese business dealings more broadly. This man would be president? No, I think this is much bigger than just some states complaining about process. I think we are already in a cold civil war. We've been for a long time. And I think that this may just be fifth generational civil war, meaning it's a propaganda war that eventually could go hot. But for now, the best way to win is through propaganda. And that's why the media did not cover the fact that Joe Biden's son was under investigation and lied about it. But again, I'll save that for later. Let's keep this to what's going on with the states and the potential for civil war. So as I noted, Arizona has had their filing. They've published a statement in support, an amicus brief in support of Texas. And the amici curiae, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's Latin, I guess, is the plural, which is all these states supporting the challenge. Supreme Court might not take it. Supreme Court might say, no, we're not doing this. I was talking to Will Chamberlain, right? He was on the IRL podcast. He's a lawyer. He's a Trump supporter. And he said he doesn't see it happening. He doesn't think the Supreme Court's going to want to be what was it called? A court of first impression. I'm not a lawyer. But the idea is the Supreme Court is an appeals court. They want the trial to go through and the fact finding and everything, and then they can rule on it. They can't do that right now. So what are they going to do? Hold a trial? It's very, very murky, to say the least. But I responded at the time when it was being reported there were 8 states or so supporting this. I was like, what happens if 8 states say Joe Biden shouldn't be president, and then the Supreme Court says we're not even going to hear what you have to say? These states are going to revolt. I mean, people are going to be livid. And Will said that's actually a good point. I didn't think about that, because the concern is if the Supreme Court takes this up, could they open the floodgates to a civil war? I think the opposite is true. I think if the Supreme Court takes this up, here's the arguments, and then issues a ruling that kind of calms everybody down, we're better off. If the Supreme Court says we're not even going to hear what you have to say, they can do it, then the Constitution doesn't matter. And these states are going to be livid, and Trump supporters are going to snap. Which brings me to Rush Limbaugh says conservative states are trending towards secession from the U.S. Now, he's warned against it, but I think he's wrong about the point he made was financial. Okay, I think secession is horrifying, and this country needs to remain strong, and the union must stand. All that good stuff. I'm not necessarily sure there will be secession, but maybe. How many people now on the left and right have said there should be a peaceful divorce in this country? A lot. We've had people say on the left when they did the voter transition project or something like that. They said that if Joe Biden loses, the West Coast should secede from the Union. I'm not kidding. This was reported by the Boston Globe and the New York Times and many other outlets. It was John Podesta of the Democratic Party, the DNC, high-ranking official, who said it is better the West Coast secede than Donald Trump win. Oregon, Washington, California. We've heard from many people on the right, Trump supporters, saying the best way out of this is just to separate the blue states from the red states because things are getting too hot and the disagreements are too entrenched. Here's what Rush Limbaugh said. Conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh has suggested that some American states could soon break away from the U.S. and declare independence. Speaking on his program, The Rush Limbaugh Show, on Wednesday, Limbaugh claimed that, quote, there cannot be a peaceful coexistence between liberal and conservative America, which he said had increasingly different cultures. Some states are trending towards secession as a result, he said, adding that there was sizable and growing sentiment for declaring independence from the U.S. in those which have a majority of conservative or right-wing voters. This is absolutely correct. I don't know if Rush Limbaugh is encouraging it. I don't think he is. I think he's saying, no, it's a bad thing. But yes, the sentiment is there. We've already heard about the push for the state of Jefferson. They want to create their own new state because it's up in Oregon because Portland and Eugene are blue, but the rest of the state is red. Why should the people who live in the red areas be subjected to the laws and whims of city dwellers? The easiest example is gun control laws. It makes absolutely no sense to ban guns across the country like Joe Biden has called for. It makes absolutely no sense for Beto O'Rourke to say, yes, heck yes, we're going to take your guns. What are you talking about? People who live in the middle of nowhere need weapons to defend themselves because there's no cops. You know, I have a lot of liberal friends who just don't get it. And they would have blanket national laws, which means if you're out in the middle of nowhere, what happens if 30 to 50 feral hogs run on your property? It became a meme where the left mocked these people saying, hey, the feral hogs, what are you talking about? Not realizing it's actually a very serious problem. And people need weapons to defend themselves from wild animals who might attack their homes and their families. But more importantly, I lived in many rural areas in my life. And I've actually had, when I was in Florida, someone broke onto my property. And there's no cops within 30, 40 miles. What do you do? 30 or 40. Oh, I'll call the sheriff. Hopefully he'll be here in an hour or two. No, you defend yourself. It's the best you can do. Let's read on. The talk show presenter made the remarks in response to a question from his show's official program Observer about whether Republicans could ever win major national elections without taking back blue cities. Limbaugh said that the party had already won many elections without doing so in the past, before discussing whether conservatives could dominate the culture. Quote, I actually think that we're trending towards secession. I see more and more people asking, what in the world do we have in common with people who live in, say, New York? What is there that makes us believe that there is enough of us there to even have a chance at winning New York, especially if you're talking about votes? He went on to suggest that liberal and conservative political cultures have become much more separated and that things can't go on this way. Although noting that he was undecided on whether entire states should break away. Quote, there cannot be a peaceful coexistence of two completely different theories of life, theories of government, theories of how we manage our affairs. We can't be in this dire conflict without something giving something along the way. Responding to John Dean, Limbaugh's comments, John Dean, who served as White House counsel for the U.S. President Richard Nixon, questioned how red Republican states would progress economically if they left the Union. Quote, Rush Limbaugh, and I guess this is a quote from John Dean is quoting Rush Limbaugh. I actually think that we're trending towards secession. So John Dean says, if the red states seceded, they would be a third world nation. It is the blue states that keep the red states financially afloat. Generally, blue states pay more taxes than they receive in federal benefits. Yes. And much of the food comes from red states from farms. However, California is a large producer of food, but it's the red areas that produce the food in California. We are talking about very serious consequences. By all means, you can say that you're the technological advancement hub and you pay more in taxes, but that's mostly about you living off of the bottom. You know what? I'll put it this way. The cities are the bourgeois elites for the most part. Not everybody who lives there is bourgeois elite, but the cost of living is very high. And someone who works at McDonald's is going to have make more money than someone who works at McDonald's in, say, rural Iowa or something like that. These cities can only function because the rural parts of the country provide the base. They provide food and resources. I mean, they're not doing fracking in New York City or Philadelphia. They're doing it in Western Pennsylvania, in much more rural areas. So perhaps Pennsylvania would be red or blue. It's swing state, so it's blue this time around. But I'm not convinced it'll necessarily go state by state. But certainly Pennsylvania, as an East Coast state, could provide natural gas and resources to the East Coast. But then what would happen if there were no more Republican voters? That would be very simple, actually. If there was a secession, and Pennsylvania, which produces a ton of natural gas from the frack fields, started... and I guess shale oil, is that what it's called? And let's say Pennsylvania joined the Northeast. They would be voted out immediately. The industry would be ended. So you want to say that the red states would be third world countries? So would the blue states. You know why? If there's no Republican opposition, then if the Democrats had their way, fracking would be banned overnight. And we would absolutely lose energy independence. TV producer Jay Svoboda responded, quote, tweeting Limbaugh's remarks and said, I know one person trending towards secession. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. They came after Rep. Kyle Biederman. A Republican announced his plans to introduce the Texas Independence Referendum Act, which he said allows the state to reassert its status as an independent nation. And now Texas is suing. Do you think that it's not possible? It can happen here. My friends, welcome to Esquire magazine. The Republican Party is now a seditious organization. These authoritarian yahoos believe that the Supreme Court will ride to their rescue and disenfranchise millions of people whom they don't believe should be allowed to vote anyway. Seditious. We're there. 17 states, 18 states, they're now saying it's sedition. Okay, congratulations. We're at the point where some kind of civil war might break out. But I tell you this. These people don't realize when they say disenfranchise millions of people that the view from the right is that 74 million people were disenfranchised by 4 states violating the Constitution. Do we disenfranchise the, tens of millions between these states who voted? Or do we disenfranchise 74 million because those states violated the Constitution? Framing is everything. Perspective is everything. Texas is saying, why should all of our votes not count because you changed the rules to win in your elections? That's not fair to us. It's not fair to our representation. And it nullifies our votes because you guys violated the Constitution to help the Democrats win. And they cite many things in which this happened. Ballot curing, for instance. 18 states feel this way. So I don't know if there's going to be a peaceful break apart or whatever you want to call it. But when the official narrative, when the mainstream opinion is that the Republican Party is engaging in sedition, that 18 states are saying we reject Joe Biden as president, and when news breaks that Hunter Biden, it's not even an exaggeration, Justice Department's interest in Hunter Biden covered more than taxes, possible money laundering over his business dealings with China. Do you think that Republican states are going to sit back when a Chinese professor bragged that they've compromised the incoming president and his family is compromised? I mean, this is a fact now. No, it's a fact. Hunter Biden's under investigation for more than taxes, possible money laundering for his business dealing with China. Joe Biden flew Hunter Biden on Air Force Two to China to negotiate some of these deals. Joe Biden is compromised. What would happen if he became president? I don't think the Republican states will stand for it. So I think that civil war is increasingly likely. But as I said before, I can't see the future. Maybe it all ends here. Or maybe, let me just say maybe, each and every time I've said it feels like we're inching towards civil war, guess what's happened? We've only got closer every step of the way. If I told you 2 years ago, in 2020, 18 states would file a suit, or we would have a lawsuit supported by a lawsuit from Texas, supported by 17 other states, saying that Joe Biden should not be the president after he won. Would you believe me? Or would people just say, oh, no, that'll never happen. If Joe Biden wins, the states are going to say fine and we're going to move on. I think that people grossly underestimate the tensions between the warring factions in this country. But let me just stress that one more time. 2 years ago, when we were watching these battles in the street, and we had news articles saying civil war was potential, was very possible. And then we had all these leftists laughing and mocking, saying civil war will never happen. Now civil war is trending on Twitter. It was trending last night. It's still trending right now, albeit not it was a top trend yesterday. It was like number 7. 18 states, maybe 19. If I had told you that 2 years ago, you'd have been like, no way. 18 states would not line up rejecting the federal election, demanding that the results be, overturned or challenged or whatever. Where do we go from here? Do you think if the Supreme Court says no, these 18 states will go, oh, shucks, geez, I guess we'll just have to accept a compromised Chinese president? I don't think so. I've already heard what people have to say, and things are about to get hot. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. I may get deeper into the Hunter Biden scandal, but there's a lot of news to go over. We got stuff about the vaccine. This is crazy stuff. I'll leave it there. Stick around at 1 p.m. I will be back on this channel, and I will see you all then.